This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everybody. Alongside Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. It is a Tuesday here on the program, and a lot to be excited about right now, Paulie, with SU Athletics. Both the men's and women's basketball teams are playing really well right now. Both have a lot of momentum. Both have a chance here to reel off several wins in a row as the schedule eases up a touch. And the football program continues to make moves in the offseason. Everybody's on transfer portal watch right now, and coach watch is Fran Brown fills out his staff. But the news of Vince Karras, coming here as the defensive coordinator, and Juan Castillo is the new offensive line coach. A lot of people excited about the hires that Fran Brown has made here in the early going of the offseason.
Yeah, and we hope that the defense gets better with this hire, and we heard a lot of excuses that it was the quarterback got hurt, the defense was tired. We're going to find out, right? You're going to find out. You got to hope. But if it does come down to the fact that you need a backup quarterback, that it's that important that it takes down the whole team, and it wasn't, Elijah Robinson's fault. Well, we'll find out. But from his track record, it's been good, and, it's also a step up for him.
Yeah.
It's you're moving from the MAC to Power 4, and you got to translate that, too.
And one of the reasons / excuses that you didn't mention there was the youth on that side of the ball, and the youth was probably an issue this year. It may be looked at as a positive moving forward as those guys get older. Now, to your point, you've said this on the show lately that, the freshmen are just going to be sophomores. Are they truly going to be able to make the kind of impact you need? But as they continue to get older and more experienced and bigger and faster and stronger, that this class is, this class that were freshmen this year, that is going to be a positive, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, and we'll also have to see what you've said a lot is, where's getting, your butt kicked for 4 straight games a good thing or a bad thing? Will it help progress these kids, or did it set them back? And it may be a mixture of both for some of them.
Yeah, and Fran Brown said that. Fran Brown said everybody's different. And we asked him that towards the end of the season, and he said, yeah, it might hurt some guys' confidence, but, he gets to see how guys react to that, and I'm sure that plays into who's going to be on the field moving forward. How do they react to adversity? How do they bounce back? How do they handle this offseason? It's all part of it. We did spend a good portion of the show today, though, talking basketball. We're going to hear from Brendan Marks here in a little bit, college basketball writer for The Athletic. And you look at SU's resume right now, and they do hit this lull, so to speak, where they've got St. Joseph's, Hofstra, Mercyhurst, Northeastern, Stonehill to close out the non-conference. And then they jump in with Clemson. Right now would be a quad 1 game inside the dome. And then again, the schedule eases up a little bit. You get the bottom, for the most part, the bottom half teams in the ACC. And then the month of February it seems like a quad 1 every time they play. How do you feel about the resume right now? How confident are you? And we didn't get into this on the show today. We were supposed to, and we didn't get to it. Maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. So we'll give you a head start here on Orange Nation Overtime. But what is your confidence level in this resume right now that this team's going to go to the NCAA tournament? Is it 50% and higher, or is it still below that 50%
I think it's about
mark?
40 right now. I just want to see it more regularly. You got to do more than 1 2-point win against a quad 1 who's a quad 2 now. And you got to get through these games. You can't have a bad loss, and apparently you've got me awake to don't sleep on Hofstra. You also can't sleep on St. Joe's because they're a mid-major.
Right, and to that point about Hofstra, Ken Pom, I've got the Ken Pom rankings in front of me right now. Hofstra Syracuse is only predicted to beat Hofstra by 10 points according to the analytics, 76-66. They've got it as a 13-point win against St. Joseph. So, that's not a dominant effort, right? I mean, these are teams that, again, they're good enough that they can give you some trouble if you don't play well. We still don't know about Donnie Freeman yet. We hope to hear from Adrian Autry either tomorrow or Thursday before the game and find out if there's an update on Donnie, whether or not he's going to play. But you're right. You can't really improve your resume all that much in these next 5, but you can hurt it. So they got to guard against that. They got to protect against that. I think you got to look for, can they put together 5 double-digit victories to get to that Clemson game and then give them a chance at a quad 1 to close out 2025. With that, let's hear from Brendan Marks now. He's a college basketball writer for The Athletic, and we talked to him about the ACC conference in general right off the bat. And there has been this narrative in recent years that the ACC is down and the conference has only gotten 4 or 5 NCAA tournament bids, the last handful of years. And I asked him, if he feels like the ACC is taking a step forward this year and how much the ACC is improved from a year ago.
Right now, as of right after the ACC-SEC challenge, the ACC had 8 teams in the top 50 of the net, which, they would have killed for last year. So the fact of the matter is, rather than being so top-heavy as we saw last year, where effectively Duke was the only team on anybody's schedule who was really going to move the needle one way or another, you have a number of teams who are in that regard this year. Duke's obviously there again. Louisville is there. North Carolina, Virginia. You have other teams who I think give the league just a little bit more balance when you're looking at the overall schedule. There is still some, for lack of a better term, there's still some anchors at the bottom. But I think when you look at the league from probably 1 through 10, it is significantly more competitive than it was a year ago. And I would be very surprised if the league doesn't get at least 5, if not 6, maybe even 7 teams into the big dance.
All right, so that's where I was going next is, how do you think this will translate come March? And for Syracuse fans, we're looking at it as, I don't know if SU is good enough to crack that top group of, North Carolina, Duke, Louisville. But, I think collectively around here, we think they're good enough to maybe be in that 5, 6, 7 range. So do you think it's realistic that Syracuse could get one of those, one of those bids if the committee, hands out a half a dozen, let's say?
I do, absolutely. And back in the preseason when I did our ACC rankings before anybody even played a game, I put Syracuse 6 in the conference. I think that level of talent there, you look with Donnie Freeman, J.J. Starling, I know they've both been injured to some extent. Nate George coming in. I was really encouraged and optimistic about the talent, and obviously to have really done 2 things so far this year that Syracuse had not done so far in Red Autry's tenure. Number one, you haven't, at least yet, lost one of those games that is really inexcusable and kind of tanks your non-conference resume before you get started. So, there's still a couple more of those on the schedule. You got to take care of the likes of a Hofstra. You've got to take care of the likes of a St. Joe's. But if you do that, then you look at this non-conference schedule, and you do have the other part of the piece, which is you have a marquee win. You have Tennessee at home. That's a clear NCAA tournament team. None of your losses to Houston, Kansas, and Iowa State, all on neutrals. Those are all, for lack of a better term, they're good losses. And so, when you look at Syracuse's league schedule, they're going to have 8 or 9 opportunities, for sort of those marquee wins. They probably need to win at least 2 or 3 of them to put themselves in the conversation. But again, health willing, I think that this is absolutely a year that Syracuse can be back in the NCAA tournament. It more than has the talent.
After all these preseason tournaments are over, who's the one team that surprised you the most so far out of the ACC?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll say this. I think Duke is better than I thought they would be, and I expected them to win the league and to be in the running for a number 1 seed. I did not expect Cameron Boozer to be the all-world player he is already. I think you can make the argument that he has been, I would make the argument he's been the most impactful singular player in the country. He's willing Duke to wins, and he's doing things, quite frankly, that Cooper Flagg didn't throughout the entirety of last year, which would have been unthinkable to say a couple of months ago. Virginia I thought would be good. They've probably been a little bit better than I thought. Clemson has been better, I thought. Miami being able to pick up a nice win in the ACC-SEC challenge against Ole Miss. I think they're sort of in that same mix as Syracuse being on the bubble. Even Wake Forest, I think, has been feistier than I thought they'd be. Obviously almost picked up a huge win against Michigan earlier in the year and weren't able to, but again, those are the sorts of teams that we're talking about. They're not dead weight. They're going to be in the mix. So of all of those, I would probably say Virginia is the one that surprised me the most. I thought this would be a borderline top 25 tournament team, and 8-1, a top 15 offense nationally, a couple of really nice wins already this year. I've been encouraged by what Ryan Noden's got going.
What about going in the opposite direction? Would you say NC State's probably the most disappointing, or is there someone else that you would think of?
Yeah, they've got to be up there, unfortunately. And look, I thought that NC State had the potential to be a top 25 team, and their defense has been it's defenseless. It's toothless right now. I figured you and I could probably go out and run a pick and roll and score against NC State at this point. It's been really ugly for the Wolfpack. I do think it'll get better. I think that Will Wade is not going to tolerate that sort of lackluster effort on that end of the floor. Other than NC State, who I still think can rebound and be a tournament team, the other one that kind of stands out to me who's been worse than I thought was Georgia Tech. I thought there were some nice pieces there at least. You've got Bay and Dongo back. You've got Mo Silla coming in. He's a top 50 freshman. Kawasi Reeves is a nice proven player. And, they've just had the floor fall out. Haven't looked competitive in a lot of these games against other high majors. Don't really have any leg to stand on in the non-conference. It's been worse than I thought it would be for Damon Stoudemire's team.
I do want to get back to Syracuse for a moment, Brendan, if we could. And, you kind of laid out and you said in the preseason that you had them 6th in the conference, and you were talking about Donnie and JJ, and they've both missed time, as you pointed to. Nate George has been good against the lesser competition, but has struggled a little bit with turnovers against the better competition. With all that being said, with those 3 players maybe not quite living up to the hype at the moment because of injuries and whatnot, what has opened your eyes about this Syracuse team to this point? What have you liked about Syracuse to this point in the season, as they knocked off Tennessee and they kind of have themselves in the mix right now?
Yeah, well, I think, sort of broadly, it's the depth on this team. Yeah. And kind of speaking to the point of what you're talking about, this is not a team that has been particularly deep in years past. And so the fact that you do have guys who can contribute off the bench, you have, Anthony's able to come off the bench. You have Tyler Betsy, obviously, has had some really impactful games. That to me is something that Syracuse, when I think of Syracuse, that's what I think of. I think of them being 8-9 deep and having these guys, and this is sort of a return to that. The other thing I would say is the front court's been a lot better than I thought it would be. It's been a lot more effective. I think William Kyle has been significantly better than I thought he would be. He's been, a legitimate high major starter. And then when you throw in, obviously, you're getting the occasional contributions from Betsy. I have been pleasantly surprised by what I thought was going to be the biggest weakness on this team. Again, we'll see what it continues to look like as these pieces get healthy and sort of fall into more of a routine together. But, if you're a Syracuse fan right now, this has got to have been the most encouraging non-conference that you've had in, 4 or 5 years at the least?
Definitely. At least, yes.
At least. So I would feel good about where they are right now. And, again, if you can get Donnie and JJ and some of these guys back and on the same page and healthy, there's no reason to me still that Syracuse can't finish as a top 6 team in the league.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Donnie. So he's missed the last 4 games, the 4 most important games of the non-conference so far, and we don't know exactly when he's coming back. It sounds like he's trending in the right direction. They may get him back sooner rather than later, but he hasn't played during this stretch, the 3 Vegas games and then the Tennessee game. I realize it's tough to speculate on how the committee will handle that, but I wanted to get your thoughts because we've heard differing opinions on this over the years about, yes, the committee does take that into account. No, the committee, won't take that into account because it was so long ago. How do you think the committee would take something like that into account, that, the team's best player missed the entire Vegas trip? They went 0-3. They were competitive, but they didn't get a win. How does the committee take something like that into consideration? Will they take it into consideration?
Yeah, the 2 things I would say. Number 1, I think just objectively, without even considering the fact that Donnie wasn't playing in those 3 games in Vegas, none of those are bad losses, right? Like losing to Houston, Kansas, and Iowa State, who are all top 17 teams on KenPom right now, on neutral courts. Like, those are defensible losses for any team in the country. So you're starting off on a strong leg there. 2, as far as how the committee is going to look at it, in my experience, talking to committee members, when players tend to miss a chunk of games, as Donnie now has, and you look at Syracuse's schedule, it's relatively light the rest of December. It's not a situation where, you've got 3 more top 15 games the rest of the month. Like, it's not a situation where you need to rush him back, especially big men and lower body injuries. You can afford to sort of take your time, given the schedule. But if he ends up missing, 5, 6, 7 games, in my experience, the committee has looked at that, I think, more favorably in terms of considering it than they would if somebody misses 1 game for a sickness, or if they miss 1 game because they sprained an ankle. Those sorts of, temporary injuries don't usually get a ton of credence. But when you have somebody who is as impactful as he has been and will continue to be, and they've been out for an extended stretch of time, especially if you don't have any truly detrimental results, what Syracuse does it right now, usually the committee does take that into account in a way that benefits your case.
Last Syracuse question, in terms of what the target is, for this team to make it into the NCAA tournament, you think top 6 and they should be safe in order to get in? Is that kind of what you're projecting?
Yeah, for me, the top 4 are kind of spoken for.
Yeah.
I think Duke and Louisville. Duke, I think, is in a tier of its own. I'd probably put Louisville a half peg behind that. And then, North Carolina and Virginia, I think, are right there, too. Like, that top 4 feels pretty safe to me. So then you're jockeying with the likes of a Clemson, a Miami, an NC State, an SMU, those next 5 teams to me, like I think the ACC is in a situation this year where it can conceivably get. I would be surprised if it was only 5. So I think if you can make it to the top 6, and it's, as you guys know, it is not just about the quantity of games, about which games you win.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the schedule and you're looking at, okay, who are the ones that are going to move the needle? It's going to be the North Carolinas, the Virginias, the Dukes, the Louisvilles. The good thing for Syracuse is that they have a couple of those down the stretch. I think they've got like Duke, Carolina, and Louisville all in their last 5 or 6 games.
It's basically the whole month of February, to be honest with you, Brendan. It's every game's big in February.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing because that's when you will have a better idea of the ones that you need to actually fill up your resume. So I don't know that top 6 guarantees you getting in. Just like I would say this, if Syracuse finishes 8th, but they have, wins over Duke and Louisville, you put that together with Tennessee, and that's a pretty strong case as long as you don't have any glaring losses. So Syracuse is going to be in that mix. I think staying in that mix the whole time is crucial. I don't know that just being 6th guarantees you anything. It's more about making sure you're getting those quality wins. They can't afford to drop any of the lackluster ones the rest of this month. And then once conference play starts, you've got to tick off a North Carolina, a Virginia, a Duke somewhere along the line to strengthen the non-conference resume.
I've got 2 more for you outside the ACC. Let's go to the Big East next. And I think we saw, this conference initially get a big boost from revenue sharing. But they see, at least early on, it's very early. It's only early to mid-December. But it seems like the Big East might be a little bit down this year compared to where they were last year. What do you make of the Big East?
Yeah, well, I would 100% agree with that assessment. Right now, just in strength of conference by overall net rating of teams, the Big East is 5th right now. It's last amongst the major conferences. To me, it's a 2-bid league, right? Like I think a 3rd team probably will get in, whether it's Seton Hall, which has been surprisingly good. Maybe Villanova can pick up a marquee win. They've got Michigan tonight, I think. But you look at the league top to bottom, the bottom is bad, and the middle doesn't really have anything to stand on. It's UConn and it's St. John's, and then it's Travolta looking around like wondering where everybody else is. So to me, I think you look at the revenue sharing piece of it. It's something that teams have talked about, giving the Big East an advantage, giving the A-10 an advantage, these non-football leagues. And that's true, but at the same time, that doesn't guarantee you anything. Just like we've seen with the SEC in football, just because you spend a lot of money doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily win. And I think the money, especially outside of those top 2, is not necessarily quite as dramatic as people think. I would say like a mid-tier ACC team, somebody like a Syracuse, somebody like a Wake Forest, they're probably spending as much, if not more, than a mid-Big East team because they don't have that football revenue either to get to the cap of $20.5 million. So I've been underwhelmed by the Big East this year. I thought Marquette would be better than it's been. I thought Creighton would be better than it's been. It does not seem like it's going to be a great year for the league. I do think it'll ultimately probably get a 3rd team in, but for all intents and purposes, it's a 2-bid league in my eyes.
Last one for me, you look at the top of the poll right now, and you've got 4 unbeaten teams that have all scored very impressive wins at one point or another. Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State. Of those 4, who's impressed you the most, if you could pick one?
Yeah, it's a hard question. It's one I've been kind of grappling with as I'm getting ready to write my weekly column. I was out in Las Vegas, was able to see Syracuse out there. It is really hard to get the mental image of Michigan just throttling Gonzaga out of my head. I think Arizona winning at UConn, I think Duke winning at Michigan State, Iowa State winning at Purdue, those are all incredible wins. The beatdown that Michigan put on Gonzaga, which I think is a good team. I think Gonzaga is probably going to wind up being like a top 10 team, maybe a 2 seed. That was something I have not seen in a very long time. And so for me, like when Michigan is at its best and it's capable of doing that, I don't know that there's a team in the country that can beat them. I think your fear, if you're a Michigan fan, is have we already played our best game of the year in November, which you obviously don't want to be doing. So I think Duke probably has the best resume altogether. They're the only team in the country that's got 4 ranked wins. But for me, if all things being equal, Michigan just has so many different ways that you can beat them, that they can beat you. And that Gonzaga game is going to be hard for me to forget for a long time.
That was Brendan Marks, college basketball writer for The Athletic, and he touched on something there that you've been talking about, going into that Vegas trip about Donnie Freeman.
Yeah, it was not ideal to lose 3 games there, but getting the Tennessee win, when Donnie comes back, if you pop off a couple more quad 1 wins and you're neck and neck with somebody, it may lean in your favor that, hey, they lost to Houston without their best
overtime.
player.
Yeah, right. And as Tim pointed out, Tim Leonard, he said, well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Now, obviously, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But if it does, that could, give them some grace, I guess, for losing those 3 games in Vegas. Certainly that 31-point loss. Although the 31-point loss to Iowa State all of a sudden doesn't look as bad because, the Iowa State went out and just trounced Purdue at Purdue, beat them by 23, but they were up by 28, I believe, in the second half of that game. Iowa State's really good. I think there are 4 teams, and we talked about with Brendan a little bit, there are 4 teams right now nationally that have separated themselves. Duke is in that group, Michigan, Arizona, and that Iowa State team that Syracuse saw in Vegas.
Yeah, and I also would like to see more of what happened against Drexel. What
do you mean by that?
It's a decent name, and you go out and you pound them, and you win by 30, and you move your matrix up without, having to, put yourself in the best possible position going into the ACC.
Yeah, and that's what these next 5 games are all about, as we said. You got to win by double digits. You got to look impressive, improve that resume, finish with just 3 losses in the non-conference, and then take a shot at Clemson.
Prove that KenPom guy wrong.
Yeah.
That was my key to the
Key to the rest of 2025. We did circle back to football later on in the show, and we got a call from Mark in New York City. We were talking about the Heisman race, and Mark came on and posed an interesting question to us about who is the Heisman, if we had to pick one, for the Syracuse football team. Take a listen.
Hey guys, just listening to your Heisman conversation, it just got me thinking and laughing a little bit. If each one of you had to pick a Heisman winner for this year's Syracuse football team, I know it's a really impossible question, but who is your MVP if each one of you had to pick on this year's Syracuse? Stonehouse. Okay, good one.
Not even close.
I mean, he's the best player, right?
Yeah.
At his position. I mean, he's the best player at his position.
Can it be Steve Angeli?
I was going to say, can you take Angeli?
Played 4, but
right. I mean, it's. Paulie's probably right. We kind of chuckle at the punter, but he is the best at his position. He's all ACC first team. He's going to be, among the top 3 punters taken. You would think. I mean, all the analysts look at it as he's a top 3 to 5 punter available in the draft. He is the best at what he does on the team.
I think that question got me thinking, and it just makes you realize how many guys got injured on this year's team. Not to make excuses, which is how this will be perceived to some, but Angeli probably was one of the best players on the team. Devin Grant, one of the best players on the team. He was injured all throughout the year.
Justice Ross Simmons.
Yeah. Deuce Chestnut could have been in that conversation. Yasin Willis, it was hurt at the end of the year. So sadly, there's not really an answer to that question. It probably is Jack Stonehouse.
That's why they went 3-9, honestly, right? I mean, there isn't an answer to the question. I think it's either Stonehouse or Angeli. It depends if you eliminate Angeli from the conversation. But, Angeli was the most important player on their team, and they lost him. And, Stonehouse is the best at what he does. That was one of our regular callers on the show, Mark in New York City, posing an interesting question about who is the Heisman Trophy winner of the SU football team if we had to pick one. I think it is Jack Stonehouse, best player at his position on the team and one of the best in the country, certainly. And again, I think Steve Angeli, although he only appeared in 4 games, he was the most important player on the team and then gave way to Jack Stonehouse.
Thing.
No, it's not.
Not a great thing that Jack Stonehouse is the
your punter and your quarterback.
And there's been years in the past where it's been the case also. Riley Dixon was probably the best player on his teams, and it's not a great thing. And next year you got to hope that your punter is just flipping fields for you and not your best player.
Although Jack Stonehouse will be playing on Sundays somewhere next season. I have a quick nugget for you. I know that you always end our Orange Nation Overtime shows with something interesting. I came across, this is sports related. So right now, Stanford played in the national championship game last night in women's soccer. They had a chance to do something that has never been done before. Now, they didn't get it done last night, but they still have another chance to get it done later this year. They lost to Florida State 1-0. And the streak is this. Stanford has won a national title in some sport, at least one national title every year for my entire lifetime, Paulie. Since November 28th, 1976, when the men's water polo team beat UCLA, Stanford has won at least one national title every year since then.
That's crazy.
Isn't that truly remarkable?
And that's what we heard that's why they were going to be part of the ACC.
Yeah.
They're smart and they win.
They win everything. During that time, they have won 137 NCAA team titles, 70 in men's sports, 67 in women's sports. Stanford is also the all-time leader in national championships. So there you go.
Steve, who's the first? I can't believe I didn't do this one yet. Who's the first superhero to ever have a cartoon? We've discussed this one.
I mean, is it not Superman?
It's not.
Is it Spider-Man?
It is not. It's Mighty Mouse.
Yes, we did
Mighty
discuss
Mouse
this.
Is in 1940s. Now, who's the first comic book character to have some would consider him a superhero.
The Hulk.
No, Popeye. Popeye was the first comic book character to have a cartoon.
Huh.
Is he a superhero?
No. I don't think so. Although he does have a superpower. I feel like we should debate that. I feel like we should put that on a poll.
Yeah, because he's not.
Take calls on that.
All superheroes are like that. Well, Superman's always super, but most of them have to do, like the Wonder Twins needed to do something.
Yeah.
He ate a spinach and turned so.
Yeah.
So if you consider Popeye a superhero, then he had the first.
That is a summer topic. That is like next July.
I'm asking it on the show tomorrow.
I know. Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like next July, we should talk about this. We got to go, everybody. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.